Welcome to Year of Connection, a year-long journey toward becoming whole self-connected. I'm your host, Pauline Shu. We talked last week about the skills and tools of connection. In past episodes, I shared some thoughts on perspective, which is one of the skills we need to develop in order to strengthen our connections with others. Today, we're going to talk about another important skill, and that is empathy. What is empathy? Merriam-Webster Online defines it as the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experience of another, of either the past or present, without having the feelings, thoughts, and experience fully communicated in an objectively explicit manner. Also, the capacity for this. That's a pretty serious definition, but in short, empathy is understanding what someone else is going through, whether or not you've actually gone through it yourself. Empathy is something almost all of us are capable of. It requires some basic experience, comfort, and understanding with feelings in general, coupled with a little bit of imagination, and topped with a lot of willingness to listen. There are many ways you can apply empathy. Sometimes it is in a situation where it's not very difficult to understand what someone is experiencing because it is an almost universal hardship. For example, people tend to feel, or at least understand that they should feel, sad when there is a death in someone's family, when someone loses their job, when a couple divorces, when a child is hurt, and so forth. Clearly problematic situations aren't a challenge when it comes to being aware of how the person experiencing them feels. This works as well for clearly wonderful situations. Things like a big promotion, having a long-desired baby, graduating from college, they're all events that we don't have to work hard at to understand why the person experiencing them is joyful. In those cases, empathy feels almost easy. But empathy can also help us through cognitive roadblocks, specifically here when someone looks fine but isn't. In some ways, we are a society of masks. For many of us, being told to suck it up or put on a brave face are part and parcel of the maturation process. Part of growing up means controlling yourself, and control does have some merit when it comes to interacting in society. I believe in and support good manners and kindness and compassion first. However, control can be taken too far. It can also be difficult to identify when someone is going through a hard time because their control might be so great that you don't see their struggles expressed on their face or through their body language. And therefore, if and when they choose to share with you that they might be going through something challenging, it might be necessary for you to call upon your empathy, not just to understand their struggles, but also to understand why they are choosing to hide their pain. There are many other situations in which to leverage and hone your skill of empathy, but we're going to discuss only one more in this episode, and that is when you encounter someone whose experience and point of view is so markedly different from your own. Having empathy at all times is important to staying connected, but in this case, empathy can make the difference between either finding common ground in order to move forward together or creating a deep divide that grows more difficult to cross as time goes on. Certainly the opposite of our objective in this year of connection. I'll give you an example. In the town where I live, there's been a years-long debate over homework in elementary school. Yes, years. In part because when it started, the research was not nearly as solid as it is now, but also in part because the two sides of the divide, pro-elementary homework and anti-elementary homework, were not connected through empathy. There was not a common ground from which to begin a productive dialogue. People felt strongly about their sides and couldn't, or maybe didn't want to, see the side of the other. I often heard the arguments that they, the other side, wanted to hurt their children through homework, or they wanted to hurt their children through no homework, depending on which side was talking. I heard that they were too stupid to understand the research, that they were fools for blindly placing trust in a single study, that they were wrong, that they didn't love their children. What a mess. If they had stopped and listened with empathy, we might have realized very early on that all of us are working hard to make life better for our children, precisely because we all do love our children so very much. Understanding where people are coming from when it's very different from where you come from is one of the most difficult emotional and mental exercises to perform. But through experience and knowledge, which are the underpinnings of both perspective and empathy, we can at least draw parallels between our two beliefs, enough so to identify with the underlying emotions of what might otherwise be a markedly different outward experience. And when we can do that, we can find a commonality, a connection through our humanness. Empathy, like perspective, is a skill. Empathy in many ways feeds perspective, which in turn allows us to more easily access our empathy. When we have a greater spectrum of experience from which to draw, it isn't so difficult to identify with what someone is experiencing and to invoke our own emotions, even if we've never been in that exact situation ourselves. Regardless of whether you have to work hard or not work at all to put yourself in someone else's shoes, one of the most helpful actions you can take in terms of fostering empathy is to listen. Hear someone out. Ask questions. Try to see the entire picture of their experience, and through this process, hopefully you will find a foothold in understanding. Listening is critical toward growing empathy as well as perspective. And listening shows that you value the speaker. You value his or her experience, thoughts, opinions, emotions, and questions. Perspective and empathy both require active practice, expansion, and application. It's why I think of them as skills. We can't take for granted that empathy will automatically kick in whenever we're faced with a situation that would be much improved through empathy. The tools of connection that we have been discussing for half a year already help us to slow down, to have an open heart and an open mind, and most of all, to listen. I hope that you will continue to employ those tools as you strengthen your skills of perspective and empathy, and as you deepen your connections with others. As always, I thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. In the meantime, I wish you safe travels.